Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey Jay, how's it going?
I'm good. Good. How are you?
Oh man, I'm doing really well as well. I'm very excited about this opportunity. Very excited about this interview. What is going on in your world? I know you guys are 2 hours behind. Like I said before, I'm really sorry. I make you wake up so early today.
Don't worry. It's a Saturday morning. My daughter was awake early anyway, so don't worry about it. No. Things are good. Yeah. No, I'm over indeed on the on the West Coast, right? So then it's a bit
Yes.
early for me, but that's okay. It's Saturday. It's 8:40, 8:30 something. Ah, you know, what else do you do on a Saturday?
Exactly. No, I mean this is your passion. I know you
Yeah,
guys have been
for
working
sure.
with this project for a while, and this is your passion. I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. So it's been an interesting journey so far, and we're far from done. And yeah, whatever I can do to share the passion, it's good.
This is
So thanks
just
for
the
having me.
beginning.
Yes, absolutely.
That's great. That's great. So let's see comments. So this is the opportunity, guys, for those who are watching us. This is the opportunity to answer to answer, perhaps also ask questions. More than answer questions, ask questions. You also may have some answers. That's right. But most importantly, please, if you have questions, let us know. We're gonna
Yep.
have a Q&A session once we are over with our demo. So please drop your questions in the chat and we will do our best to answer your questions. Especially Jay, he is the expert here.
Well, I mean, I just saw that you had a couple demos as well, so I think you might actually be able to answer a lot of the questions already. I'm
Awesome.
just here to help.
Awesome. Well, Jay, for those who are who don't know who you are, it might be just a couple because you are quite popular. So do you mind telling us more about yourself, your experience? I know you've been working with Power BI for over a decade, I believe. So if
Well,
you don't mind, please let us know who you are, what you do,
yeah,
and
for sure. So I'm Jay. I'm a product manager on the Power BI team. I mostly focus on DAX, the programming language that everybody loves to hate. That's what I work on. And I also did composite models. If you heard about um, the feature that previously was called Direct Query for Power BI datasets and Azure and other services that I renamed to composite models over Power
Mhm,
BI semantic models. That was also one of my features that I built. So I
mhm,
don't just do DAX. I also do other stuff related to DAX or related to modeling in more general sense. Um, so yeah, I've been on the Power BI team for 4 years now, I think, um,
mhm.
and been with Microsoft forever. And also always did Power BI even before I was on the Power BI team, and even before it was Power BI when you had all the add-ins in Excel, with Power View and Power Map and Power Pivot, of course,
Mhm.
Power Query. So all of that, yeah, I just latched onto that very early and made that part of my career. So yeah, and then I got the opportunity to join the team, which was really cool. So now I'm here.
Yeah, no, this is great. And you guys been working with Power BI I mean, I feel like the last few years,
Hmm.
so many things are going on. Visual calculations and the new improvement of the native visuals in Power BI. So you
Right.
guys are doing a phenomenal work,
Oh, thank you.
phenomenal
We're
job.
trying. We're trying
Yes.
to keep the ball moving every month, right?
Mm,
And sometimes it might feel like for the community that we're not investing, right? We
mhm,
have had that feedback for a while. Um, the reason was at that time that we were all investing in very big things like visual calcs, right?
mhm,
And if we're investing in big things, then we don't have a lot of updates to share, right? Like then we
mhm.
just wait until the big thing is ready for us to share. So if it becomes quiet, it doesn't mean that we stopped investing in the product. It's just that we're working on big things, so you need to be a little bit more patient. So
Yeah.
anyway, no, it's exciting. It's exciting to work on a product that is updating almost every week and at least every month, but oftentimes in our servers every week is a new update. So it's a very fast paced environment. Yeah.
Yeah. I believe so. Yeah, it's a lot of work that you guys are doing behind the scenes. So I know we talked about this briefly a few minutes ago. Tell us more about your hobbies. I know you also have a few hobbies, and this
Oh
is
yeah.
a really good one that you shared a few minutes ago.
Well, music is very important to me, as you might have seen from the record clock there. I
Mhm.
used to have a poster about music behind me as well, but I removed that for a while, but just because anyway, change of pace. So music is very important for me. I play the piano since I was 7 or so, I think. At some point, I had to make a choice whether to become a professional concert pianist or to go into IT. And then my father told me, well, there's no money in music, so maybe go into IT and keep the music as a hobby. I didn't really like that answer at the time, but he was right.
Mhm.
So, that's how I ended up in IT. That's how I ended up doing what I do now. And then the other hobby that we talked about, I'm originally from the Netherlands, and I moved to the US about 5 years ago. And I really miss the Belgian and Dutch beers. So you can get them over here, of course, but
It's
they're
not the
very
same.
expensive. I mean, they're fake Belgian beers over here, but the actual Belgian beers that are imported are very expensive.
Mm.
Um, so I started brewing my own beer. So I learned to brew, and that was actually my brother-in-law that taught me at first. And now I'm doing that myself, and I'm capable of making the beers that I like to drink. So yeah, that's happy. I'm happy about that.
No, that's great. That's great. So, are you planning on creating your side hustle with the type of beer or what?
Well, I've been thinking about at least like selling some bottles or giving bottles away and asking people for a donation just to reduce the cost a little bit, right? Also, when you make beer, you're making beer not in small size, right? You're not making
Hmm.
like a liter or 2 liters or half a gallon or whatever. No, you make at least 5 gallon, right?
Hmm.
So it's a lot of beer.
There's plenty, yeah.
So I mean, also, do I want to drink all of that beer myself?
You might,
Not
right?
very healthy. So, maybe by just giving something away, and then maybe people will want to pay for that a little bit, reduce the cost, and then,
Hmm.
it's an expensive hobby as well. So yeah, it's very exciting, very interesting. So yeah, that's what keeps me busy.
That's great. So you do this after work. That's awesome.
Yeah, the weekends and in our garage. Yeah,
Right.
basically, yeah,
That's great.
I'm not allowed to do. I'm not allowed to do that in the house. My wife doesn't like the smell.
Exactly. Yeah. Hopefully, I can make it to the conference next year so I can just taste your beer as well.
Yes, well, you're absolutely welcome. Anybody watching is absolutely welcome to ping me, and whenever you're in the area, come over, have a beer. I
There
actually
you
have
go.
a what they call a kegerator set up, so you can
Ah,
take it from the tap.
there you go.
Yeah, but
That's
I can also
awesome.
bring some bottles, not a problem.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, we have people from all over the world here.
Awesome.
We had Arun.
Uh huh.
Thank you, Arun, for joining. We have also Nis
Hmm.
007 from India. Thank you for joining. And like I said before, you guys are more than welcome to leave your questions in the chat. We have a few minutes after we are done with the demos to go over those questions.
Yep.
So highly encouraged to do that.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, let's get into visual calculations. I have this question in mind. I had this question in mind for a while as well. So what inspired you to work on visual calculations? What was one of the main drivers?
Um, one of the main drivers was actually um, mostly there's two things. Feedback.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
DAX being hard has been in the top 3 of our feedback from customers for years. Like people have complained for years and years and years that DAX is very hard, very hard. And
Mhm.
even it went as far that we had customers tell us, hey, I am hesitant to adopt Power BI, or I'm blocking further adoption of Power BI in my organization because DAX is so hard. Right? And that's a problem for us as a product. Of course, we want everybody to use Power BI, right? And if an organization says, I'm not going to use Power BI because DAX is too hard, that is a warning signal. That's a red flag. You need to do something about that as a product, right? And then, so that was number one. The other one for me more personally is I struggle with DAX. Like every day when I have to write DAX, I go like, oh, okay, here we go. I can do the basic stuff, right? I can do, of course, I would safely assume everybody that has ever written any DAX, they can write a sum or an average, right? I mean, you understand that, but I don't know about you, but the moment you write calculate, the moment you start writing the function called calculate, I immediately get a little bit worried because I'm like, can I make this work, right? Like, can I trust my own ability to make this work? And often I can, but not always. And let alone if I do a summarize or a top N1 trick or other tricks. There's so many tricks that people have to learn to actually make this work properly. That was really inspiration for me as well. So when I joined the team, I started looking around like, hey, what are the big ideas in this space, the DAX space, that we can do that will actually make a difference, right? Not an incremental difference, like adding a bunch of new functions. No, actually a big difference. And I stumbled across a specification from a previous product manager of the same space before me called Visual Calculations. And it never went anywhere. And after I started digging a little bit more, I found two more older specifications. So I'm actually the fourth one trying to make this happen. And I think I got the furthest. Well, I know I got the furthest because now it's in public preview and nobody got that far. So it's not my original idea, right? I want to be very clear. It's not my original idea. It has been around forever. You can also see that Marco Russo, for example, posted an idea about that on our ideas forum as well. So it's not I'm not the inventor of this thing, right? It's just that I found it and I was like, this is a big thing that I'm looking for to actually make a dent in DAX and make DAX easier. So that's the goal. Let's make DAX easier for the rest of us, right? Let's make DAX so easy you don't have to go to training. You don't have to read the books. You don't have to become an expert on day one, right? I'm not saying you should never go to training. I'm not saying you should never read any book. That's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm just trying to postpone that moment, right? Today, for you to be successful with DAX, you almost on day one have to start reading the books and take the trainings. What we're saying with Visual Calcs is that should not be necessary. Like, you should have a way to get started using just your regular knowledge, maybe from Excel background. You should be able to do the things you have to do on day one, right? And then once you're ready, you should be able to grow into the more advanced stuff. And that's where the trainings and everything is, right? But today, we only have the advanced stuff. We don't have the simpler version, right? And that's what Calcs is really targeted towards. So one other way of saying it is, I like to think about DAX as a swimming pool. And maybe that resonates more because I have a daughter now who can't swim yet. If you think about DAX as a swimming pool, today we only have a deep end, right? That means if you jump in, you better know how to swim.
Exactly.
Otherwise, you'll drown, right? So what we're doing with Visual Calcs is, instead of only having a deep end, we're giving you an end that is higher, where you don't drown, right? Where you can just walk in, even if you don't know how to swim, and you can still survive, right? You'll be fine. Like, the water will come to maybe your middle, but whatever, right? You won't drown. You won't be in any trouble. Once you're ready, you can go deeper into the deep end, right? And DAX becomes this journey of a slope into more complex solutions and more powerful solutions. So I like to think about Visual Calcs as this shallow end to the DAX complexity.
Yeah, it's basically, here's what I'm thinking about Visual Calculations. I feel like it's like a complement. This is just the beginning, right? It's a complement to the deep knowledge that we need to learn. in the future. So this is just the beginning. So
yeah.
okay.
And measures are not going away, right? The need to learn the complicated stuff in DAX eventually to become an expert doesn't go away, right? We're not taking that away, right? We're not like making the DAX into a kiddie pool, right? With only a shallow end. No, we keep the deep end, right? So that's the idea. We allow you to start at the shallow end if you feel more comfortable there, and then move to the deep end later. So that's how I see visual calculations.
Yes, yeah, I totally agree with that. So here is another question that I have, and I wrote it down. I wrote this down. In order to use visual calculations, do we need to be familiar with DAX? Let's say that I've heard about Power BI. I know it's just drag and drop, to create visuals. But do I need to have the DAX knowledge to start working or playing out with visual calculations?
My goal is that you wouldn't have to have any DAX knowledge. Now, today you don't, right? Today you need a little bit of DAX knowledge because you need to learn a little bit about the language. But the goal of this feature is to allow you to jump in without ever having seen DAX before. What we do assume is that you have some exposure to Excel formulas.
Yes, Excel is important.
And I would think that is a safe assumption. I think the majority of the people that will install Power BI and open it will have seen Excel before and will probably have built simple formulas in Excel. That is my assumption. So with that assumption in mind, if that's your background, my goal is to make sure that Visual Calcs is something you can just start with. Like you can learn your way in the tool without having to go learn somewhere else, right? You should feel comfortable just after you discovered this, that you can go somewhere to enter a formula, to do a calculation. You should feel so comfortable that you go like, oh, this is just like Excel. And then the more you start using it, the more you discover it's not entirely like Excel. It actually is different than Excel, but more powerful. And then you uncover more and more and more and more, and gradually you go into this deeper end of measures and all the stuff that is today is DAX. So the goal here is, assuming you have some previous exposure to Excel, some previous exposure to some Excel formulas, maybe you wrote an if, or maybe you just sum two cells together in Excel, right? Assuming all of that, I think you could get started without any knowledge. That's the goal. Are we there today?
Almost there.
No, not really. I think this is a journey that we're starting on. We need to do better than this, than what we have today. And we will. We have plans to do better.
Okay, that's great. So how do visual calculations differ from traditional DAX calculations?
So great question. So they are different in many ways. And you actually have calculated columns and you have measures, right? That's the tradition. That's the two you have. I mean, I'm forgetting about calculated tables for a second. I'm forgetting about calculation groups, like all the, like, I'm just leaving that out for a second, right? Basic version, you have calculated columns, you have measures, right? So visual calculations are a lot like calculated columns in the sense that they execute row by row. They execute by default in a row by row context. So they go across a set of data in a table, and they go from top to bottom by default. They differ from visual calculations. From calculated columns, that they're not pre-calculated, right? The downside of calculated columns is they are pre-calculated, they are part of your data refresh, they load your model, the results are stored. They're not dynamic. Measures, they are dynamic, right? They are calculated dynamically. Visual calcs are dynamic like measures, but they use the simple to understand context from calculated columns, because measures use filter context, which is harder to understand. It's harder to wrap your brain around or wrap your head around to go like, what exactly is the context in which this measure is being executed? What we said with visual calcs is we actually take the simple context from
the visual
calculated columns. We take the on-demand execution from measures, and that's what visual calculations are. Also, big difference, they are not in the model. They are on the visual. The name visual calculations should tell you something. It is on the middle, on the model, right? On the visual, sorry, not in the model. So that means they don't have to deal with the complexity that a measure has to deal with filter context. They can just focus on this one visual, and the data that's in the visual is all the data that exists for that calculation, right? So then they become way easier. So in that sense, they're like a calculated column on a table. They only just care about the table they're on, really, unless you specifically reach out into the model.
Yeah. And you also mentioned something really important here in terms of performance, because if we compare with calculated columns, we are adding more complexity to the model. So there is more, we are basically hurting, in terms of space. We are consuming more space. So what is the difference with visual calculations?
They are calculated on the fly like a measure, so they don't consume space, right?
So we save a lot of memory there.
You need memory just like measures to calculate them, but they will, and even compared to measures, they will be faster. Okay. So if you compare, so there's a couple things about performance, right? It's not only the speed of execution, but also how much weight do you carry in the model, right? And with calculated columns, that's the worst case, right? And like they bloat your model, they make it very slow. They take up a lot of space. Measures, visual calcs don't take a lot of space. They score equal there. But because visual calcs can operate on aggregated data, they don't have to reach back into the low level of data. And I'll give an example in just a second. So their performance is going to be better than a measure. So let's say you're doing a running sum of sales for years, right? A measure, if you write a running sum of sales for 3 years, what a measure will do is we'll go find all the individual sales records for all those 3 years and sum up those numbers to years and then sum up the year numbers. That's what a measure will do, which always goes to the individual sales records, right? To figure out what is the total for the year, because it has no previous knowledge of there might be an aggregated version of the sales record, the sales number for that year. Even if it was just calculated, the measure will just ignore it and do it again, right? So the measure will always go to the lowest level of data, almost always, in 95, 99% of the cases. Visual calcs are different. Visual calcs, because they are on a visual, if the visual already shows the sales amount by year, then the visual calc will not sum up the individual sales records, right? Because the visual calc only knows about the stuff that is in the visual. So if the visual shows sales amount by year and that aggregation has already happened, then the visual calc, to do the running sum over years, will just take the numbers for the years. Will not go back into the model to get all the individual sales records. Just the whatever, 5 years, 5 numbers. Yeah, that's a performance gain that is out of this world. That just blows measures out of this water, right? So if you have a lot of one-off measures for specific visuals today, you switch those measures into visual calcs, you probably don't even have to change the DAX. Very likely you don't have to change anything or minor tweaks to just naming. You will get performance benefits.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, because it's going to be adding just what is in the visual. Makes sense.
And then you don't even have to use a specific visual calcs functions that we introduced, right? Like we have new functions that we introduced. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about regular DAX that you're doing today in measures or in calculated columns, copy pasting that DAX into a visual calc, maybe making some small tweaks to make sure that you refer to the right stuff, and press enter, right? I'm not talking about using new functions, just taking, if you're today doing a calculate or a sum or a max or a min or an average, just taking that thing, pasting it into a visual calc will give you better performance.
No, that's great. So in terms of trade-offs, do you have anything to share in terms of trade-offs?
Well, I mean, the biggest problem is they are on a visual, right? So that is also the benefit, but it's also the problem. Like you get a lot of benefits from them only being on the visual. They're very simple, they're very fast. The downside is you can't reuse them really. Today, we'll try to make that better, but today there's no really reuse, right? So if you want to have the same visual calculation or the same type of calculation on two visuals, you have to copy and paste the expression, the function, the code into another visual. Well, okay. But what if you wanted to change the logic later? Now you have to change the logic in two places. That is not good, right? That means that, I don't know, let's say you did a running sum, right? Let's stick with that example. You did a running sum of something. You showed that running sum in two visuals using two visual calculations. Now you change your mind and you want to say, I actually want to do something different than a running sum. I want to implement maybe a running average, right? Which for whatever reason you want to do. You then have to change both visuals. You have to go and edit the expression twice, which is, to me, not really great, right? That's the benefit of something like a calculated column or a measure. You change it once. Wherever you use that measure, you just have changed the logic, right? And what you show has changed. So that's the biggest downside, the biggest trade-off here. That is a temporary situation. We will have better reusability.
I like that.
We're figuring out what that means because they are not in the model. So they cannot be as reusable as a measure, right? Because they are not in the model. They are on the visual. So how do we make it easier for you to reuse that thing that you just defined on the visual by allowing another visual to refer to that visual, or by creating something else? There's multiple thoughts that we're thinking through. We don't have the answer right now. We're actively talking about it every week with all the architects, and there's loads of things that we still want to do for visual calc, right? But reuse is one of the hot topics that we're talking about. Like, what is the right answer here?
Yeah. You guys are the magicians, so I'm pretty sure we'll get something in the upcoming months.
Oh yeah, no, for sure. Every month there's something new.
Yes,
and we'll keep at it. And we are now at like page 40 or so of the functional specification that we wrote for this, and that functional specification is about 110 pages, 120 pages long.
Wow.
So if you think, oh, this is it for visual calcs, they're done. No.
Not yet.
At all. No, there's stuff coming that I cannot talk about yet. That will even change all of this. Like, you think you understand visual calcs now, hold on to your horses. Like, there's more coming.
There you go.
More stuff coming, and it will change it again. And the stuff that's there will stay around, but will make it even easier to work with.
I like that. That's great. Okay, so in terms of recommendations,
right?
What are some best practices you recommend for using visual calculations?
Well, I mean, I would not use them for today for things that you want to reuse them over and over and over again, right? If you have one of those core calculations that you want to reuse in every other calculation or in every other visual, then don't do that in a visual calc, right?
Create a measure.
Do that in a measure. It doesn't make any sense to do that in a visual calc. Now, if your measure is not performing, then it might be worthwhile to still try a visual calc to see if you can get better performance, right? Of course, if you tried everything to optimize the measure, it's still not performing, you might want to switch it to a visual calc. And then even if you're reusing that measure everywhere, it might still perform better by just switching it to visual calcs, but you get the downside of reusability, right? Reusability problem that we just talked about. So those are a little bit of the trade-offs. Also, if your measure is very complex to maintain, or you don't understand what this measure does, you might be better off writing that in a visual calc, because chances are it is going to be way easier to get to the same result without having to build this massive statement, right?
Piece of code, yeah.
For example, let's say you have a list of countries, right? And you have the number of restaurants of a certain let's say you own you manage a chain of restaurants, right? And you want to know how many restaurants do we have in each country. Well, okay, fine. That's an easy measure, right? You just count the number of restaurants in each country. Great. And now I want to compare how many restaurants we have compared to the country previously in the list. Let's say we list all the countries alphabetically or by whatever ranking. Now I want to see the difference of my number of restaurants over here in the US versus the number of restaurants, let's say, in Canada. What's the difference? How many more restaurants or less restaurants do we have in the US versus Canada? Doing something like that is not easy in regular DAX, right? It involves a summarize, it involves a calculate, it includes a filter, it includes a top and one trick. Honestly, when I first tried to do that, I couldn't. And I had to reach out to actual experts like Jeffrey Wang to get that done. And he wrote it for me. And that was like 40 lines of DAX code, right? And then once we had window functions, which, by the way, we haven't talked about at all yet, but window functions is something we introduced in December 2022, that made that conversation easier because now window functions allow me to refer to something that came before me with an offset, right? And then visual calc, so that reduced the 40 lines to 20. And then visual calcs reduced it to just one line.
One line.
Number of restaurants minus previous number of restaurants.
There you go. That's it.
I mean, this is the beauty of visual calcs, right? And I think one of the core things for people to understand is that actually under the covers, those visual calcs functions that you see that are specific for visual calcs are shortcuts to window functions. So let me ask you a question, Nestor, for a sec. When we released window functions in December 2022, I assume you saw that, like index, offset, window, those things, right? What was your reaction?
Honestly, I thought when I saw the Windows word, I related to that to SQL because we have that in SQL.
Yes.
And I said, well, there's something. These guys are working really hard on this. I don't know what's going on next. So that was my impression.
Well, I think that's spot on, right? Yes, they were inspired from SQL. Absolutely. I think we gave them better names than some of them in SQL because in SQL you have lag and lead, etc. as well, which is a little bit confusing. But you're absolutely right. I was actually showing you the Lego pieces I was using to come up with visual calculations. We were actively working on visual calculations. We already had all the plans. We were implementing it, but to implement it, we needed to build a foundation first. And we decided to show you that foundation. So window functions, index, offset, window, order by, partition by, match by parameters, rank, row number.
Rows, yeah.
Those functions are just a foundation on which the visual calcs functions are built. So previous, if you write previous of sales, that is just a shortcut to calculate sales offset -1 with the right order by and partition by filled in. What we do essentially under the covers is fill that out for you. So you don't have to worry about all the complexity. You can just write the previous. But that also means one very important thing. When you write previous and you're not happy with exactly what it does, you can write exactly the same using a window function and calculate, and then tweak it to whatever level you want to do, right? So that's another example of, hey, you start at the easy end, right? The shallow end of the pool, and you can go into the deeper end. And when you go into the deeper end with window function.
Yep, that makes sense. This is right. So let's go over a couple of questions here real quick before we go into the demos. Let's see. Let's go over the comments first. Someone had a comment about we are welcome for beer.
Yes, of course you are.
Yes.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, we often make something out of something that we hate or hate is maybe a strong word. I don't hate DAX. I like DAX. I do think DAX can be easier.
Yes.
And just because I struggle with that myself, I latched onto this idea and said, you know what, I wanna make sure that I change something in this world, and that's what visual calcs are.
Yeah. I can tell you a quick story here related to DAX. And so one of my former coworkers, she started playing with Power BI. Then a few days later, she sent me a message. She said, I can't believe this is so complicated. She said, well, it's the beginning, you know. Once you get there, you will feel more comfortable. But to your point, so that's the driver that you guys had, right? It's a little bit complex.
Yeah.
And this is one of the products that you have.
But I mean, for example, one of the first stumbling blocks that people have is if you don't know anything about DAX, you just open Power BI and you load some data. Let's say you load data about sales, right? Classical example, you have your sales and you have your cost. There's loads of people that are confused why in Power BI I don't, in the formula bar, I can't just write sales minus cost. Like, why doesn't that work? Because I can see I have a column called sales. I have a column called cost. Is Power BI really so stupid that it cannot take sales minus cost and understand what I mean? Excel can do that. And this is the first stumbling block that people come across. Very quickly they learn, oh wait, when you say sales, you mean one of the results of sales, one of the individual numbers in the column of sales. So I need an aggregate. So I need a sum of sales minus a sum of cost. And then it starts working. I'm talking about a measure here, right? Obviously, if I did a column, it would just be sales minus cost. That's one of the reasons why people find DAX hard, why they stumble on day one, because in the measure they have to write that. And also why some people shy away from measures, because, well, how I think it should work, sales minus cost, oh, it does work. It's just over here in the calculated column. I don't know what the difference is between a calculated column and a measure, but measures sound really complicated because I wasn't able to make it work there. So I'm just going to stick with calculated columns. As a result, you have loads and loads of very bad and very slow models because people are scared of measures. And it goes wrong the day one, like the moment they start typing this. The moment you type sales minus cost, you press enter and the measure says, I can't do this. They go like, why not? It's right there. Why not? And then they go discover calc columns. They do it there. They go like, at least this understands what I meant.
This is how it works.
Right? So then keep doing that. Never learn measures. With visual calcs, hopefully, once people discover that, they can just do what they did. Right? Like wanted to do, sales amount minus cost, done.
Right.
And still get the benefits of actually getting a proper calculation without all the downsides of a calculated column.
Yes. Totally agree with that. Where do you get your shirt?
Yeah, that's my friend Mark Mark Lelyveld, one of the MVPs, Dutch MVP. He's on data-mark.com. I'll put it in the chat. And he has a shop with many Power BI related swag, and you can get this on a t-shirt. You can also get a sticker, anything. Yeah. And he gave me this t-shirt, so I'm gonna make I'm just gonna say datamark.com. That's where the swag is.
That's great. That's right. Let's see what else we have here. Visual calculation works only inside a specific table.
Well,
maybe he meant specific
visual, right? Yeah, and since a visual can also always be represented as a matrix or as a table, it works inside a specific table or a specific matrix. But it is tied to the visual, so I think that's the point here.
Yes.
Yeah, I know.
Tables in DAX, yes, can be tricky, that one.
Yeah.
I used to work on Tableau, and we could write the formula from 2 capsules that are visually exactly the way you describe it.
Yeah, this is exactly the point, Nis. That's exactly why people confuse or are concerned or struggle with DAX in day one, because they go like, why do I have aggregates? Always need aggregates. Once you understand that, it's fine, right? And then you feel more comfortable. But that's the first stumbling block. And if you know zero about DAX, that's the first one you're going to hit. And some people just give up and they never look. And that's something that we want to avoid.
Okay, right. Context transition. Yep.
Yes, that's the problem. Filter context, context transition. We don't do a good job of explaining that, what that is, how that works, how it's happening. We don't do a good job of explaining that. Yes, we could have invested in doing that, by the way. We could have made the product explain that better to you, make it visual, like show some like visual way of showing what context is currently being applied. I'm not saying that won't ever come, by the way. It might come. But we chose to, instead of trying to explain something, like you can there's two ways to solve a problem, right? You can solve a problem by doing better explanation, but not solving the complexity of the problem, right? If a problem is complex, you can just try to explain it better and hopefully people will get it. That is the alternative that we have. We just explain filter context and context transition better to you. Not saying you should not do that, but we said, instead of keeping the problem as complicated as this, what if we just make a simpler problem? Just make the problem simpler. Then you don't have to do all these explanations. People don't have to go and read all of this stuff. They can just feel their way through it and trust their instincts. So yeah, that's the goal.
Yes.
Yes,
Most
exactly.
come from Excel. Yeah.
It takes time to transition from Excel formula mindset to DAX mindset, and I think with Visual Calc, we're essentially getting closer to this Excel formula mindset for people.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Awesome. So let's go over the demos real quick. I do have a couple of examples, and then you also have a couple, I believe.
Yeah, I can do one example as well, but I do believe you have a great couple of examples first.
So let's see. Hopefully this works. Okay. Can you all see my screen?
I can. Yep.
Okay, great. So let's do this quickly. Yeah, I'm going to be going over 4 different examples, running sum, moving average, percent of parent, and also percent of grand total. So for the running sum, so let's see, no pressure at all since we are live. Yeah. So
I'm here to help. No worries.
Yes. So let's look at the visual here. I have a matrix. The first thing that we're going to do is select the visual. Let's go over the new calculations icon right here.
Yep.
And then let's create a simple measure here. And this is very, very similar to Excel, to your point, Jay. So let's call this gross profit. So this is just simple math, right?
Yep.
It's going to be sales minus cost. That's it.
And look at that. You don't need an aggregate. You don't need to write sum of sales. You can write sum of sales and sum of cost. It will work, but you don't need it.
Yes.
And by the way, these are calculations, not measures, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Just, don't call them measures because they are not measures.
Yep.
Just
exactly.
Trying to keep terminology straight.
Yes. So this is the result.
Yep.
And then if we want to create here, if I want to give this the right format, the currency, so I can add here format.
Yep.
And then here, so let's use this currency.
Which is, of course, whoops, I think you missed a...
Did I miss? Oh, yeah, I missed this quotation mark.
Boom. Which is, of course, I mean, this is not ideal, right? Like you can format a measure, you can format a column. Why can't you not format a visual calc, right? And that's something that we're working on, and we're we're thinking through how to do this.
Right.
But formatting is very important, because now this thing has turned into a text.
Exactly. That was my point. Because if I want to add here this template running sum,
Yes,
this is not going to work.
No, it's not going to work, because
Right.
it is going to expect a number, and this will say, it's now a string because you put format around something.
Exactly.
Yes.
So that's something that I wanted to share with you, so you guys are aware of that.
Yep. So you need to get rid of the format, right?
Yeah. Oh, I can use the other field cells instead. Okay. Awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, that's how it works. The running sum, quite straightforward to your point. Just running sum, and this function just work for calculation visuals, correct?
Yes, visual calculations. Yes, it's
visual
only available
calculations.
visual calculations.
Okay.
So if you now look at our DAX documentation today, I just updated that last week, I think. On all the function pages, you will see something that starts with applies to, and then little icons to show you if that function is available in Visual Calcs, or if it's just available in measures and calculated columns and calculated tables, or if you can use it anywhere. So for running sum, you'll see not available for measures, not for calculated columns, not for calculated tables, only for visual calculations.
Visual calculations. Yeah.
But for sum, the sum function, you will see it available everywhere. It's also available. So
yeah. This is great. So that's running sum, and then let's move on and talk about the moving average. So moving average, it's a way to smooth these ups and downs, these crazy ups and downs. So let's select the visual again. Let's go over new calculation. And here we're going to go over this template, moving average.
Right.
Boom.
It's just a moving average. It's just so simple.
Exactly. And here we're going to select gross profit, because this doesn't have the format.
Right.
And then for window size, so let's call this 12, because I want to have the 12-month average here.
Yeah, so window size here means what is the size of the box you want to move across your visual, right? So, and it happens on the lowest level, right? So in this case, your lowest level is month. So if you say 12 here, we'll take a slice of 12 months. So of course, if from January it will only be 1, from February will be January and February in the first year, right? So the box will grow until it's 12.
Exactly.
And then when it's 12, it will start sliding down. So then when you get to the next January, it will be just that January and the last February. For February will be March and up until and including the next February, right? So then it will just slide down.
Yeah. Boom. That's it.
Yep. That's a moving average.
That's a moving average. And then if you go back to the report, just play with the filter here.
Perfect.
There it is.
And this, I mean, isn't this beautiful? Isn't this simple?
Yes.
This is so exciting, right? To see somebody else do it. This is the point. This is why we're doing this. Yes, you could have done this before. Absolutely. But it wouldn't have been so easy to just write it down.
Yeah.
Right? You can almost just walk up to it and go like, I wonder what function I need for running sum. I wonder what function I need for moving average. Oh, it's just called moving average.
Yes, quite straightforward.
Yes.
Now this is great. Yep, that's the moving average. So let's go over the percentage of parent.
Yes.
Let's select the visual again. Let's go over the new calculation icon here. And then here, let's call this. So this is the grandparent, or what was it again? I forgot.
Percentage of parent.
Parent. Let's call this parent cells for now. And then here, let's select percent of parent.
Right.
And then here for fill, I want to show you guys a quick shortcut. Control-Shift-L, and then current cells. Boom. And then for axis, this should be rows. And tell us more about rows. Why rows, Jay, here?
Yeah, so so rows or axis defines how a calculation runs over the visual matrix, right? So the bottom part of the screen here that we have is called the visual matrix, right? So that the thing that starts with date, year, date, month, current sales, that thing, right? That whole thing, yeah, that's called the visual matrix. So when you write a visual calc, it has to know how to operate over that visual matrix. Today, the default is rows, which basically means we go row by row, like a calculator column. So read rows as across the rows. From top to bottom, we go first row, second row, third row, fourth row, etc., all the way until the end. That's also why, if you go into the IntelliSense, if you press backspace, just backspace.
Commit.
No, just backspace into your text.
Backspace. Okay.
Twice. Backspace. The other way. That's a space. Backspace. Go back.
Backspace. Backspace. I see what you're saying. Okay.
I want to see the IntelliSense. So if you start typing rows, you will see a little icon. There we go.
Yes.
You see the little icon?
Yes.
Pointing downwards. This is a visual reminder of what rows does. It goes top to bottom. We also have a left to right, a columns that goes left to right. You can't do that if you don't have that columns direction, right? You don't have a proper matrix in your visual, so it doesn't have the columns direction. But we do have columns as well. That then allows you to have the calculation go left to right across your visual. And then you have combination where you can have columns rows and rows columns, and that will allow you to say snake like in a Z pattern, in a Z pattern, or an N pattern over your visual. That also is only available on visuals that actually have an axis, a columns axis. This visual doesn't have it because it's just a regular table. So anyway, that's rows. That's the axis parameter. Running sum also has an axis parameter, but by default it's set to rows, so you don't have to specify it. Here, we decided to make it required so you can see it.
Exactly. And then if we're gonna give this the right format, we can also play with this, right?
Yes.
So I like to do this round here. And then let's see if this works. This is going to be times 100, 2 decimals, and then ampersand in here. Let's see if this works. Fingers crossed. Boom. That's it. We have here the percentage. Awesome.
Yeah. And you could have done the same with, of course, a format, right?
Yes.
But now it's still a number, right? So that's good.
Yeah. So we have the other exercise here. Let's do this real quick. It's very similar to the previous one.
Yes.
So let's select the visual here. Let's go to new calculation. Here's going to be, let's call this grand sales for now. And then right here, Control-Shift-L to select
so this
field.
This selects, Control-Shift-L, great, yeah. This selects the uses collapse all, right? So collapse, what you used previously, allows you to tell us on which axis, and in this case you only have rows, on which axis to remove detail. So what this divide does, it takes the current sales on the lowest level, which is month, and then it collapsed on rows to the next level, which was year, right? That's what you did with the previous one. If you write divide current sales, comma, collapse current sale on rows, what it does, it removes detail on rows, so that's vertical, and it, in this case, it will then get the sales number for each year for each month, right? So then you get a divide of the current sales for the month for in that year. So that's collapse, removing one level of detail. Collapse all does exactly the same, but then removes all level of detail. So then collapse all will always return the same number. which is the total sales for all of the rows, all
all
of the years. All the way at the bottom of your matrix will be one number. That is the number it will always return. That, whatever that number is, 339. No, the other one, because you're using current sales. So it's the other one.
Oh, that's right.
399 something, that thing.
Yep.
It will always return that number. So then this function is now calculating the percentage of grandparent, right? Which is, in this case, grandparent is, well, you don't have anything above years, so your grand total, right? So that's what collapse all does. It removes all the level of detail of the axis you specified.
Except of this, boom. And you guys can also play with the format.
Yeah.
But that's what I have. So let's go back to, let me see if I can find the, okay, I'm gonna stop sharing.
You want to see a demo?
Yes, please. There you go. This is all yours, Jay.
So I have a demo about a function that many people don't know about yet. Is at level. So is at level allows me to determine whether or not I'm on a certain level in my calculation. So the reason that's interesting is because you can then decide if you wanted to do something different on the lowest level or on a different level. So I have two levels here. I've got fiscal quarters and fiscal years, right? So of course, if I just write this, right, it will just be, on every level, it will just take the number of sales amount, right, for that level. So for this level, it will be this, to that level will be the same, right? Fine, nothing special. But if I do something more interesting and say, you know what, I actually wanted to do something else. I wanted to say, if I am is at level, which basically means if I'm currently on a certain level, I wanna do something, right? So I can say, I want to check whether or not I'm on the quarter level. Okay, so if I'm on the quarter level, I will just return 1 for whatever weird reason, right? Then if I'm not on the quarter level, which means I should be on the year level or on a higher level, like a total, I'll just return the sales amount, right? And of course, this is a stupid example because why would you return 1? But just to show you what it will do, it will show exactly that. It will just return 1 whenever you're on the quarter level, right? There is a quarter in the row here, right? So that's why you're on the quarter level. But look, when you're on the total for the year, you're not at the quarter level anymore. So we're just returning the sales amount for that year. If you scroll down to all the years, right here, you have a total for all the years. You're not at the quarter level. You're neither are you on the year level, but you're definitely not on the quarter level. So we'll just return the total for the years, right? So if is at level allows you to do custom totals because it allows you to specify the behavior on each level. Yes, this should be easier, right? Because you now have to go, well, multiple if statements, multiple is at levels, and say not is at level, and and ors and etc. So it's still a little bit complicated, but remember when we talked about window functions versus visual calculations functions, and I said in December I was showing you the ingredients I was using, the Lego pieces I was using to build visual calculations. I'm now showing you the Lego pieces that I'm using to build custom totals, right? Because with this working, we can now have UI that allows you to just tell us, hey, I want this total of this column not to be the normal total that, the measure that gets reevaluated on that level returns. No. I want the average of whatever came before me, right? Or the sum of whatever came before me. Like the classic where the sum doesn't add up to what came before because your measure isn't additive. You can then have that in the UI, just say, okay, the total should be the sum of what I can look at, not the reevaluation of the measure, right? What under the cover, you do that in the UI. Under the covers, what we do is this code, right? So now we have the ingredients to make that UI. See how this works?
Yep.
Right? I'm just showing you the Lego pieces that I'm going to be using to build custom totals for you all.
Custom totals. Yeah, this is great.
So you can already do custom totals today using if is at level. But yes, of course, this is relatively complicated, especially if you're like, you think Visual Calc should be easy. Why is this is not as easy as it should be, right? So,
Yes.
so that's the demo I have. Yep.
No, this is great. Thank you. So we have
Yep,
a couple
please.
more questions here real quick.
Yep.
And let's see. Jeroen has a question here. Let's see what he says. Maybe a comment. What is the position of Power BI after Microsoft Fabric?
So what's the position of Power BI after? I find the question very interesting. After Microsoft Fabric, I think what he might be asking is, what is the position of Power BI in Fabric?
Yeah, it's within Fabric. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Power BI is just like, honestly, Fabric was born from Power BI to a large extent, right? All the learnings that we have from building a platform like Power BI, we took and put them into Fabric. That includes also a lot of people that were originally involved in Power BI from its inception. They now work on Fabric-related topics. Power BI is not going anywhere in the sense that it is still one of the core products in Fabric. And Fabric looks a lot like Power BI because the foundation of where Fabric was built on is Power BI. So that's why sometimes people confuse that Fabric is replacing Power BI. No. It's just that Fabric was built on the same foundation, so it looks like it, but you can still use Power BI, right? Power BI as a thing on its own, if you never want to touch the rest of Fabric, you don't have to worry about it, right? If you just want to build a report, just share the report. Oh, you happen to now publish it to Fabric, but it doesn't hurt, right? You don't have to do anything differently. In fact, by it now being Fabric, you get more opportunity. You can now explore, oh wait, what is a notebook? Oh, data science. I've never worked with that. What is that? Oh, let me build a lake house. What is that? How do I learn? How do we explore that? So there's way more tools in the toolbox. It's just like a toolbox, right? Just because you might have inherited a toolbox with 50 drills in there, you might only ever use one. But it's good to know there's 49 still out there in case you ever need them, right? And that's the way I see the journey from Power BI to Fabric, right? Power BI being just one drill, that's it. Fabric is many drills. If you never use them, fine, they're still here, right? If you ever need them. But if you need them, it's great they're here because, hey, they all communicate with each other. It's very easy to jump from one to the other. They're all compatible. So that's how I see the journey.
No, that's right. And I have a question here related to this is my question related to oops, let's see. This is related to the exam that we have to be a data analyst certified, the PL300. Is it being replaced by the Fabric test, the Fabric exam, or what is, do we know that?
I don't know for sure. I'm not a complete expert on what's happening there.
Okay.
So I don't know for sure.
Okay, so let's
You should really ask the learned people about that.
Yes.
And yes, we are we need formatting for Visual Calc.
Yes,
absolutely we do.
That's correct.
And we will get it.
There's more to come. So is the goal to have one update every single month, or?
We try to do, but we already missed one.
Yeah, I realized that. I was looking actually for the updates. Oh, I don't see anything here.
Yeah, loads of people got concerned a little bit.
Yeah.
And it goes back to what I said before, is if something doesn't get an update, doesn't mean we are not investing in it. It just means that we're working on bigger stuff for that feature that we're simply not ready to talk about it yet. So we are working on quite a few big things for Visual Calcs that will come, but it will take us a little bit. We will, I think, next month we will at least have a new function that we'll release. A new function. I think I can tease the name here. Why not?
Let's do it.
I don't think anybody has heard of it yet before. It's called lookup.
Lookup. Oh, that sounds interesting.
So
is it X lookup, V lookup, H
Yeah,
lookup.
just
What
lookup.
kind of a lookup is that?
It's all of the lookups. Just you need one function to do all the lookups.
I know.
Right. So imagine you have a matrix where you want to do, find me the sales amount for this specific fiscal year. Right. You can now write lookup and say lookup sales fiscal year equals 2019.
Boom.
That's the number. So wherever that number is in that visual, it will get you that number, and then you can do interesting things with that number, right? So
that's right.
That's a new function we'll introduce very soon. I don't know. I probably spilled the beans here. I don't think you've heard about that before, but that's okay. So that will come soon, hopefully next month. And there's more stuff coming. It's just going to take us a little bit. As I said, we're just getting started. There's large things that we're moving. We're also fixing a lot of bugs, but in our updates, we don't mention all of the bugs that we're fixing, right? So even if the update doesn't tell you there's something functionally new, there might be bugs that we fixed, right? That you previously were aware of that we actually have fixed. So we're also fixing a multitude of bugs every month, but we don't write that all on the blog because then the blog will become even bigger than it is today, right? And it will become books like we fixed this bug and that bug and that bug and that bug. I mean, even only for Visual Calcs, we would have to list out 100 bugs that we fixed, right? So that's also something. And then the other thing is, I think the updates to the scanner API we talked about. So for reusability, we want to make it easier for an admin to discover which Visual Calcs are being used in their environment. So admins have something called Scanner API to their availability. That's an API that allows them to scan workspaces. We want to expand that Scanner API to include visual calculations. So you can then discover which visual calculations people are using. Why is that? Well, if you manage an enterprise,
performance,
you see loads of people writing the same visual calculation, that's maybe a sign you should have a new measure in your semantic model, right? Because then people can just use that measure instead of having to write the definition all over again. We've been working on that for a while now. Originally, we were planning to release that last month. But unfortunately, with what is happening currently in Israel, our team over in Israel, who carries the responsibility for this API, I mean, honestly, they had other stuff to do in their life with what's happening there, right? So, things changed, right? And we had to push back on that a little bit just because of the situation over there. So yeah, of course, if you live in a country that is currently in a war, essentially, not making any judgments, just stating facts.
Yes,
yeah, that has an impact on your life, right?
So exactly.
Yeah.
So I got a question from a Google form that I used.
Yes.
I wanted to spotlight this question real quick because that was my promise. Let's do this quickly. Let's see. Okay, so let me share my screen here. Can you see my PDF?
Yep.
Okay. So this is the question. This is not a question in my opinion, but they want to hear something about moving averages in visual calculations. Well, and this question is coming from Jenny's Chafferdead.
You did a great demo just now.
Any comments? Any additional comments on this?
Well, I mean, moving average is easy, right? You just write moving average sales and then the window size. If that doesn't give you what you needed, if you wanted more flexibility, you can absolutely use the window functions to do the same, right? So you can write an average X of sales amount with a window.
Window function.
Yeah, just use window.
Okay.
Right.
So
you can do that. So if moving average is not flexible enough, you can have that. You can express exactly the same using a window function.
Window function. Within visual calculations?
Yes. Because you can use window functions in visual calculations and measures and cal columns everywhere. They're available everywhere, right? So you can do that. So I think a moving average should be simple this way. So that's all I had about that.
Thank you. So we have a couple of things here before we wrap this up. So if the audience, if the followers have questions, concerns, where can they provide their feedback?
Well, I invite them to go to aka.ms
There you
slash,
go.
there we go, perfect, visual-calculations-feedback. This is the place where I collect all the feedback that people have been giving me. Of course, I have other channels as well, like social media, etc., etc. But if you want to give solid, structured feedback and you want to have the biggest chance that I actually follow up on it and really listen to you, this is the place to go. And of course, social media is great as well, but this is just an easier, structured way for me to collect that feedback.
Do you check this? Yeah. Do you check this website every day?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a standard tab that is open every day. Like I check that website, I get notifications, I am subscribed to this topic. So whenever somebody replies or even gives a like, I know. So yes, I'm actively looking at that. So please give your feedback here. Also, I post sometimes some surveys on social media. So if you want to keep on top of like what's happening with this product, with this feature, I recently asked for, I had a survey out there for sort order, I believe. And that just goes to show you that we're thinking through how people would want to implement sort order in visual calculations, and we haven't found the answer yet. So then we're asking the community about like, hey, what would be your preference? So if you see those kind of things coming around, feel free to just leave your thoughts, fill in the forms. Hopefully it will be easy, couple questions, couple minutes. And then the other one, if you want to read more about visual calculations, there's a docs link, aka.ms/visual-calculations-docs. And that will just guide you to the DAX documentation, and it will just show you everything there is to know about visual calculations and all the functions that are available.
Yeah, I think this is the link that you're talking about. Let me see if I can find it here quickly. This one.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay,
yes,
awesome.
That's the docs, the documentation page.
No
right?
excuses, right? The information is there.
Yeah, and just go and try, right? If you want to learn about what you can do, this is the place. Visual Calculations Docs is the place to go and start. See how you can enable this and see some examples. And then take it for a spin. Try it. Don't just do the examples that we gave you, right? Try to think about what can this actually do for me in your situation, right? And then see if you can solve the problem using Visual Calcs. And if you can't, let me know, because then there might be something missing. We might have missed something. We might have not built the function that you need, right? I believe we have a good set of functions, but I might be wrong, right? So if you miss functions, tell me. Use that feedback link to tell us, hey, you need to implement this because this is important for me in my business or my situation that I'm in, right? Use that. So tell us what's good, what is bad, what is missing. That is the place where I want you to go. So please try it today, because together with your feedback, we can actually make this into a great feature that will actually make DAX easier.
Yes, that's a really good call out. Awesome. So for those who want to connect with you, where can they find you?
Most easy on LinkedIn these days. That is where I'm most active. Yep. I still have a Twitter/X account, but Twitter is quickly becoming my X social media.
So mainly LinkedIn, I guess.
Mainly LinkedIn these days. I'm also over on Blue Sky, which is a Twitter alternative. I'm there as well. I'm also on Mastodon, which is also a Twitter alternative. So okay. I'm all over the place. There's not a lot of people with my name, so just search for my name. There's one guy that I actually know who is named exactly the same. He works at IKEA. The last time I checked, that is not me. The other one with that name is me.
Yes.
So awesome. Yeah, it's going to be easy to find me.
Well, Jay, this has been really, really great. And thank you everyone for joining. Thank you for your questions, for your comments. This is encouraging. And again, we really appreciate your work, Jay. I know you guys are doing really well, and we are expecting more. As you said, you guys are working really hard. So
yeah,
very excited.
Thank you for the nice words, and thanks for doing this and setting us up. Thanks for having me. And I want to stress, it's not just me. I said it in the beginning, right?
Mhm.
I'm just the lucky one that gets to talk to all of you about all of this. But there's loads of, the actual heroes are behind the scenes, right? Are
Behind the
behind the
scenes.
curtain. I'm just the one that is showing you this, but the actual heroes are the ones that actually built this stuff, right? And I'm just happy to be the one talking about it, and I'm also involved in building it. But there's like many people involved to make this a reality, from architects, from managers to designers to software engineers, like the actual name of the functions, how that thing what that thing looks like, the fact that we have this little FX button, even the logo. This all designed and all thought about, and the way this all works, the color choices, everything is being designed by a whole group of people. So it's not just me. Just I wanted to stress that.
Yes, let
Many
them know
folks.
that we are very thankful for their work. So
Yeah,
thank
no,
you.
and
Thank
I'll let them know.
you. Exactly.
Well,
All
thank you
right.
so much for having me, and
Th-
enjoy the rest of your weekend.
yes, I would love to have you in the future when you guys have more updates. So I know
Yes,
you're working hard on that.
happy to come back. No worries.
Awesome.
Just invite me back.
Thank you guys and take care.
Okay. See you all.
All right. See ya.